Well, welcome, day 3 of the PowerShell and DevOps Summit. Nice that everyone is still here, still awake. So let's talk a bit about generative AI and how we can make it do less useless things. But before we get into it, big thank you to our sponsors. Wouldn't be here otherwise. Also, Patch My PC is out there. They're giving away a Switch this afternoon. So what I would like you to do is not attend that session, because the least amount of people there increases my chances. So it's going to be horribly boring. Don't go there. And the Switch is already broken, so. All right, a little bit about myself for those of you who don't know me. My name is Jaap. I'm a developer advocate. Microsoft MVP, spoke here a number of times. The reason I'm standing here talking about generative AI is not just because it's a buzzword, but it's also because I've worked for a company that is a startup in this space, so I got to firsthand experience the challenges of building tools on top of large language models, and yeah, the challenges that come with that, and the strategies to get benefits out of it. So that's a little bit about why I'm here and talking about generative AI. In addition to that, I'm very lazy, so whenever there's a tool that makes my life easier and can take some of the churn away, I happily jump on it, buzzword or not. So yeah, Gen AI can definitely help with a lot of that. As for the structure of the presentation, I'll be talking a little bit about the history, about prompting, flows of prompting, and after that we're just going to dive into a demo, show what's possible, put into practice a couple of the things that we're doing. When building out the demo, I was experimenting with two different approaches. The one would be to preload all the responses and kind of fake my way through it and cherry pick all the good examples. But I decided that was a little bit boring, so we got rid of that. So we're just going to do it live, and we're going to see how it fails or how it succeeds. So if that sounds fun, then you're in the right session. As for questions, raise your hand, shout at me. We're not with that many people here, so it should be easy to keep it interactive. Sweet. Does sound good so far? Just to get an idea for the room, how many of you are currently using generative models, either OpenAI or Copilot? All right, that's most of the room, so that's good. What's your experience? Yeah, exactly. It's indeed very mixed. It also depends on the application and what you're trying to make it do. But yeah, let's talk a bit about the evolution. It's a bit hard to pick which ones to go into, but generative AI can generate any kind of data. What we're mostly going to be talking about today is code and language, so interacting with either the OpenAI APIs, or you could use the Azure APIs. But can also generate images and video. The video one, for those of you who are not familiar with the work that OpenAI is doing there, Sora is the latest one that they haven't publicly released yet, but that one made some pretty impressive videos. Another keyword to keep in mind are tokens. If you're not familiar with tokens, token is about a word. So every word that you put into the model is counted as a token, and in general you pay by token. So what you're trying to do whenever you interact with any of these models, you want to limit the amount of tokens unless you have all you can use. So if you have a ChatGPT subscription, for example, you can chat for as long as you like. The downside of that is that it has to be interactive, so you're also wasting your own time, and big advantage of using the APIs is you can run it in the background, can wait for it to complete, and then take a look at the result. Bit of a timeline of AI in general. I didn't really know where to start. Could have started with Alan Turing, but I think the first chatbot was Elisa in the 1960s. I think my favorite bot that ever came out, does anyone remember Microsoft Tay? That one was fantastic. The contrast is not very good. In 2014, the Generative adversarial networks came out. So this is where you have two networks that compete with each other, and by doing so, get better results. GPT-3 was released in 2020. Apparently, there was also something else going on that year, but at the time I took a look at it. It gave some interesting results, but as most of us will be aware, the real big kicker came in at the end of 2022. And I remember at the time I was at AWS reInvent. This came out, and yeah, GPT 3.5 was really a game changer, where it got out with some good results. So what I've understood is that it's very important to include slides with a lot of logos. So memorize these, very important. All right, prompt engineering. So some of the things that are important. I also shared links afterwards with the resources where this comes from, but include as many details as possible. So if you're writing a script or you're trying to solve a problem, try to provide as much context as possible, as much as possible, but make sure it's sensible data. So the models are taking in more and more tokens. So what it means, you can put more and more data in there, but make sure it's quality data as well. So it's not good to ask it, write me a script that does X. It might give you the results you want. That's what Copilot does as well. But providing more context about your environment, your coding style, what you expected to deliver makes a big difference. In addition to that, you can either ask it to adopt a persona or tell it that it is a software developer with 30 years of PowerShell experience. So therefore, it would be the only person on the planet that has 30 years of experience with PowerShell. But by putting it, by guiding it and putting it in that state of mind that it should reason from that perspective, you can get better results. And one of the things that I did at PSConf EU was I prompted ChatGPT to pretend that it was Justin Groot, and if I would prompt it afterwards for either code or for PowerShell questions, it would come up with better reasoned answers and better quality code. So that one was obviously a bit of a joke, but by putting it in that context and having it reason from that frame of mind, it will get better results. Be specific. So not only be specific of what you want, but also be specific of what you expect to get out of it. So if you're asking for a script, tell it how big should it be. Should it have parameters? Should it be an advanced function? Should it be a script file? Should it be a module? And ask it to, and also validate that it understands what you are asking it to do. So instead of immediately asking it to provide you with code or with documentation or with a description, verify that it understands your request. So you can do that, for example, by saying before There's multiple approaches. Before answering, confirm that you understand the request, or before answering, ask me a question if it helps you clarify what I'm trying to achieve. Those are all techniques that can help you get better results and better output. And yeah, the last one, give examples. So if you're creating a new function that is part of your module, you can provide it with a function that you've already created and have it use that as a baseline, so it has a better understanding of what it's supposed to do. If you're asking for unit tests, for example, provide your function, obviously, so it knows what it's creating unit tests for. One of the strategies there is also to, specifically to unit tests, instead of asking it to just write me 15 pester tests for my function. You ask it, please describe this function. What does it do? What are the paths that the code can follow? And then ask it, okay, for the first path that you described, generate 3 pester tests that do X, Y, Z. You get better responses then than if you just ask it to generate unit tests for this function. So you get better results that way. So that all makes sense? Sweet. This one I thought was quite funny when I read this one. Not sure if you've seen this one. You can ask the model to take a deep breath, so it would statistically come up with better results whenever you would ask it math questions. I've done this myself as well, specifically with image generation. If you're not familiar with DALL-E, whenever it generates images, it's actually not very good at putting text in there. So I would prompt it to take a deep breath to really think about what it's going to output. And it would still mess it up. Doesn't always work. But what is the takeaway here is give a model time to think. So what I was saying about the unit test example, where you try to guide it towards an end goal. Validate that it understands what you are asking of it. Validate that it understands what your code is doing. Those are all strategies to make sure you get better results out of it. And then also ask it what it thinks you want from it. And yeah, the additional question one. Another one that I like doing, yeah, obviously also AI generated. This was the 7th iteration. I kept on asking it to make it funnier. I don't think it really got there. But one that I found helpful, both in getting better results, is having it pretend that it is a panel of experts. So pretend that you are 3 PowerShell experts and you're sitting in a room and you're discussing how you want to tackle this project, and you see a back and forth going on in there, and it especially less useful, but it's especially funny if you make one of the personas what's a word for that? Have one of the personas not collaborate and mess up the meeting. I wasted half an hour having my ChatGPT personas fight each other. It was fantastic. The code didn't get better, but I had a good time. Yeah, so prompt and flow engineering. So there's a concept of 0 shot. So 0 shot is you don't give it time to analyze, to get into the right frame of mind. Just try and get a response out of it. It's the quickest way to get it to produce something, but depending on what you ask, it might not be the best way. Multiple iterations are extremely helpful. So the company I work for, they released a research paper which was called Alpha Codium, and their approach was to summarize. Their approach was to have GPT-4 compete in code competition. So this is something that is quite common for large language models to get an idea of how it performs. But instead of just having it output results, give it unit tests that the solutions need to pass. Have it run the code it generates through those unit tests, and if it fails, iterate over it until it works, and then have it, once the code passes the unit test, have it generate synthetic unit tests, and have it iterate and improve its code based on both the existing unit tests and the synthetic unit tests. And that way, it was possible to get significantly better results. And even with just 100 iterations, it would improve the accuracy of the results that are coming out. So that is something that is actually quite useful, both the multiple iterations and actually being able to either run or test your code. So ChatGPT itself currently also does that for Python code. So it can run its own Python code in a sandbox environment. But we're here for PowerShell. So for PowerShell, we still need to do it ourselves. Another one is have the model explore different approaches. So if it comes up with a solution, ask it to review its own solution. And if the solution has multiple steps, ask it to discard two approaches or two steps and come up with 2 new steps, and then have it iterate over that a number of times. And by doing so, you get better results because it can think, rate, and organize itself while getting to the results. Then I covered all that. Any questions about this so far? Does all make sense? Cool. Because slides are boring, how about a demo? See what we can do with specifically PowerShell and OpenAI or any language model and a bit of ChatGPT. The idea here is that I mentioned at the start there were 2 approaches I could go for. I have a number of demos prepared, and afterwards, after those demos are done, I'd like to start a new PowerShell project, but I'm going to rely on input from all of you. So if you already have an idea of what I should write, keep that in mind. I'll ask for it later, and we're going to start a PowerShell project from scratch and see what we can come up with and how we can iterate and improve based on that. Does that sound good? Sweet. All right, I shall make it bigger. How is it in the back? Is it all visible? Cool. Sweet. So interacting with OpenAPI with the API endpoints is quite simple. There's a lot of samples available for it. In this case, I'm using GPT 3.5 and with a completion. So what we do is I stored my API token, super secure. We have the endpoint here. We need to do a bearer token for the API key, and then the body we send out is simple with which model are we using, what kind of token limitation do we want to put on there, and a number of other properties that we can set. And then the response is invoke REST method. And if we want to see the result of what we prompt, we can get it from response choices text. So let's run this one. Let's ask it to describe itself and see what we come back with and see if the conference Wi-Fi. So we can see it knows what it is. So let's make the output slightly bigger. All right. And to make that a bit simpler to interact with, I just threw this into a function with a text parameter in there, so we can interact with it directly. So close out this one. So with that, we'll ask it, we're a PowerShell expert. Did I ask it to do? Experienced PowerShell developer with 30 years of experience. Yes, in PowerShell. This is a 100x developer, so got 100x ourselves. So I assign it to a chat variable. I wrap it in parentheses, so it both gets saved to chat as well as output. So here we have it describe how it would start a PowerShell project. We've assigned this to chat now, so we're going to include this as information for our next prompt. And our next prompt is going to be have it write a function. Do mind, this is GPT 3.5, so it's not 4 yet, but it's just to illustrate. It's just to illustrate what is possible with the models if you prompt it well. Because I'd say GPT 4 is a bit cheating because it's already a lot better, and then there's no real reason to improve the prompting that much. So we can see comes up with get server info. What it didn't listen to correctly was that I wanted it to be able to run on my Mac. So I suppose technically it can run if I put it in invoke command and run it against the Windows server, but otherwise this won't be successful on my device. And then the next step is going to ask it to take a look at it and make sure that it works and see what it comes up with then. And it still has the WMI object in there. But by using an approach like this, you can iterate and improve what it comes out with. And especially if you do this as a background job while you're developing, you can parallelize it with PowerShell jobs or with RS jobs. Have it come up with 10 solutions with 10 different solutions. Have it rank it, and then only present the 2 best solutions to your problem as a solution. And that is something that I find myself doing more and more often, either to help myself get an idea of how I could improve my code, or to tackle a problem. So this is if we want to, yes. Yeah, sure. So the question is if it doesn't come with the right result. So the example here being it has WMI object, doesn't work on macOS. How do you get it to be on the right track? There's a number of ways you can do this. You can actually run the code, see what happens when the code runs, give it back the error message, and tell it, okay, I ran your code. This is the error message. Please explain why it isn't working, and come up with 3 possible solutions of how you would fix this. That's one way. You can also point it out yourself. You can tell, okay, but I think you're wrong because this command is not good. Can you suggest a different command or a different way to get this information? And keep in mind that it is X, Y, Z. So what you're doing then is you make sure that it has all the information, all the details, all all the context, to put it in, to keep using the correct terminology. Make sure it understands the context well, and that is something that GPT-4 does significantly better than 3.5. Does it answer your question? Yeah. Sweet. The other thing to keep in mind whenever you're building things, a big advantage of using, in this case, GPT 3.5 is it is significantly faster, even the API, than GPT-4, especially at peak times. The thing to keep in mind whenever you're using any of the API endpoints is when you want accuracy, just get the best model possible. It's probably going to be the most expensive and the slowest one. But if you need to do simple things like a JSON conversion, or you want structured data to be transposed to something else, then GPT 3.5 is usually good enough, and you can then use a better model to analyze the results from that. So speed should be a consideration depending on what you're trying to achieve. So with this was some custom hacking with invoke web request. Gives you full flexibility. I built a number of tools on top of this. Last year I had invoke pester GPT. So what I would do is I would run instead of running invoke pester. Is everyone familiar with pester here? Most people are. Pester is a testing framework in PowerShell. I would invoke pester. I would look at the results. If one of the tests would fail, I would submit the code that it was testing. I would submit the unit test, and it would ask it to come up with two solutions, either fix the code or fix the test. But by wrapping that with a invoke web request call, it would usually come up with decent solutions in order to fix my code. But because being lazy is always better, there's also a PowerShell AI module. It comes with a lot of commands. Let's do a measure object here. 73, so that's a decent amount. So once you have it set up, so once again, this also requires the same API key. So you do need an API token or Azure API token in order to be able to do that. That is. How are we going to do this? Okay, I guess I'm going to invalidate this key immediately after the session. Here we go. Free token. All right. And let's see. It has to be a secure token, so yeah, there we go. There we go. Now we should be able to run it. So you can see, it comes up with a pretty good description. So I was a bit confused by a couple of things in the keynote. So one of the things that confused me was, what is an unconference? But this is the unconference. Another one that confused me, and the one that I'm not going to do live, James mentioned the C word, which was the reason we didn't have the conference for a couple of years, but let's not ask that one because everything is recorded. Here we have an example. We are actually including some PowerShell. So let's take a look at Pikachu.json. So we can see we have a JSON object here, nothing too exciting. But the nice thing is we can see how it will do with this. Ask it to convert it to YAML, CSV, and TOML. Converting it to CSV is something that PowerShell does natively, but YAML and TOML are, you need additional modules for that. So that is actually something that is useful. And we can see that it comes out with what appears to be decent YAML, decent CSV, and also a TOML that looks good. So you can have it do multiple things, but if we just want some PowerShell code out of it, we can also do that. And we can see that does indeed look like PowerShell code that would work. And another one is, instead of having it return text, we can also have Copilot. And what that does is it gives you the ability to come up with PowerShell code and then also run it directly. It does ask you first, unless you force it, of course. But the paths are not correct. So instead of running it, we'll go for explain. There we go. You can see that it can explain your code, and you can interactively have it generate commands and also execute it directly. So module is called PowerShell AI. If you want to do any kind of automation and you don't want to build your own wrappers, this one is quite easy. As you saw, you just need to enter in your API token, or in your case right now, my token, because it's still valid for the next 15 minutes. Yeah, that is that part. Any questions so far? Yeah.
In case people don't also know, if you're also using Azure OpenAI, you can interact with that as well. Extremely well.
Yeah. So the comment was there's also Azure OpenAI, and that one works very well. And the PowerShell AI module also supports that. The module is written by Doug Fink, by the way. He's also an AI enthusiast. He's not speaking here, so I can show his module and pretend it's me. But it's actually Doug. Yeah, for you, we have about 10 minutes left. So what kind of PowerShell project are we going to build using what we've discussed? Anything? Can I have a suggestion? Shout something. No. Otherwise, I'm going to point at people. Yes. What are we building?
Microsoft Word web scraper.
Microsoft Word?
Learn.
Microsoft Learn web scraper. All right. Cool. Yes. Let's copy paste the earlier prompt we have had. So that was in here. But we want to make sure that that it really knows what's going on. So we'll tell it 40 years of experience. And Jeffrey Snover calls you when he doesn't. No. All right. So what I mostly use ChatGPT for the web interface, is to validate my assumptions about the kind of queries that I'm doing. Because the API queries, they all cost money. And this one is a flat fee. So you can experiment and get an idea of what will work and what doesn't work. So comes up with a lot of things, but we want an actual script, and we have 5 minutes, so let's interrupt it. I want to design a web scraper for Microsoft Learn. Provide me with a code sample in PowerShell. So now we didn't give it a whole lot of information, but let's see if we get something that will actually work. Ethical things, come on. All right. It's a bit basic, but let's accept this for the. Please refactor this code. We need some error handling in here, of course. So try catch is obviously a good idea. We didn't need it. We didn't need to help it with that. It has identified the correct thing to put in the try block, so that's at least good. I'm not sure I completely agree with the way it handles catch. So if you're familiar with try catch blocks, it abuses the catch block with an else if statement. This is something that catch should have done. Yeah, just to we'll pretend this was fantastic. We could prompt it again and ask it to properly make use of catch and have multiple catches using those exceptions. But for the sake of time, we'll just ask it to generate pester test and comment-based help documentation. Because obviously we need some unit tests and we need some documentation. The interesting thing about this is there's a concept called TDD, so test-driven development. And if you take that to an extreme, you can you write your test first before you write any code. I've never gotten myself to do that. The nice thing about the large language models is you can make it do it for you. So that's the only time that I've actually used test-driven development and first writing tests has been by making ChatGPT do it for me. So we'll quickly take a look at what it comes up with. All right, describes the parameters, comes up with an example. It knows where Microsoft Learn is, so that's good. Selects English US, so a language we all understand. It even comes up with notes, so we can put our name in this, because obviously we wrote this code, it was all us. And let's take a look at what it does with pester. There's some bugs in here, so we would iterate over this, because it should, of course, load the function, or if there's a function in there, it should load the function, and it's not doing it at the correct place, because that should be in a before all block. It should not be in there. But we can see that by prompting it, by asking it to solve a problem, first think through it, then ask it to come up with code, ask it to come up with documentation, with unit tests, you can get it to a decent state. And with that, so what we're trying to do with prompt and flow engineering is we're trying to get the best possible performance out of the models that exist. So what you can achieve is you can, if you prompt GPT 3.5, for example, well, guide it the right way, you can get better results than if you just cold call GPT-4. So the idea is to get more bang for your buck by guiding it, by helping it understand what you're trying to make it do. So you need to be effective in your prompting. You saw that the moment I told it that Jeffrey Snover calls it when he has questions, that's the moment it took it seriously and started writing some decent code. Context is important. So context can mean a lot of things. You can describe your scenario, what you're trying to achieve as well as possible. Context can also be existing code. It can also be error messages. It can be unit tests that already exist, so you can validate your assumptions. The other thing is everything always changes. So the basics of the basics that I described here are applicable to all models that currently exist. But the exact implementation, the models themselves, they change on a continuous basis. But the basics described here do stay the same. That is the one we needed. A couple of the resources that you can use. All the slides will be shared, so you don't have to take photos of this, but you can. Platform at OpenAI, that's a guide on prompt engineering. Some of the stuff that we discussed here is also in there. PowerShell AI module by Doug. I mentioned Alpha Codium, so that is the code generation with unit tests and dynamic unit tests in order to get good results. I figured that there are some YouTube links in there as well. It's a bit hard to pick my favorites, but I really appreciate the content that Andre Capati makes. AI Explained is also a good one that is not too hip, where every week it's the most exciting thing that ever happened, but yeah, explains it quite well. Going forward, yeah, what I would encourage you to do is to explore and experiment. Try to identify a problem that you have, find a challenge, and try to fix it using the workflows here. Chat.openai is my playground. I test my API request there first to get an idea of how it will respond to those. Using these techniques, local models in general are weaker than, are significantly weaker than what OpenAI provides. So by using these techniques of prompting it, providing it with the right context, you can get better results out of weaker models, including local models. Experiment, and yeah, if you do build something cool or something not cool, reach out to me, share it with others, because we can all learn from that. With that, we have 1 minute left for questions. It's a non-AI generated dog. That's actually what he looks like. And we have, of course, the feedback form. But are there any questions? Yes. So I've worked with AutoGPT for most of my PowerShell projects. The question was, do I use any frameworks whenever I'm doing these kind of requests? I've used AutoGPT, but that's mostly for my non-PowerShell workloads. Whenever it's PowerShell, I loop it myself with jobs and yeah, get results, gather the results that way, and yeah. All right. With that, thank you for being here. There will be snacks out in the hallway, and yeah, thank you for joining today.